I was given great advice to start local. Everybody wants to build these big national and global brands. Sometimes it's so much easier to start locally to build that credibility and to have those raving fans, talking about you. And that's what I did.
Hello and welcome to the BuddyBoss podcast, where we dive deep into the strategies that will help you build, launch and grow your online communities, your courses and your memberships. I'm your host, Jason Broderick, Marketing Manager and Head of Content here at BuddyBoss. Everything discussed in today's episode with a transcript and links to all of the resources are available in the show notes over at buddyboss.com/podcast. In today's episode, I'm joined by Marsha Guerrier from HerSuiteSpot. HerSuiteSpot is a digital platform designed to empower women of colour to advance as leaders in their careers and businesses. In this episode, Marsha tells us about how she started by giving micro grants of just $100 that she bootstrapped from the profits made from selling services and programs, how brand awareness and credibility was her biggest initial challenge, and how she has overcome that to gain the trust of corporate sponsors and raise over $30,000 at the start of the pandemic, and how your brand values and your mission must be in alignment with both the community you're serving and the sponsors that you hope to attract. Let's dive in. Marsha, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me and for giving me of your time. So tell me a little bit about HerSuiteSpot. Tell me what it is, tell me who it's for and what it does for them.
Hey, Jason, thanks for having me on the show. HerSuiteSpot is a private network for women of color thought leaders, community leaders, and business leaders. We provide them with the community, the coaching, and the capital to develop their business strategies, marketing plans, and technology for their small businesses.
Nice. So one of the things I saw on your site when I went having a look, something, I guess a little bit unique from the other guests that I've interviewed is not only are you providing sort of informational resources or courses, membership kind of classic resources, but you also have what you described as, I think, funding or capital. Could you tell us a little bit about what that is and how it works and how you how you give it out, that kind of thing?
Absolutely. That's one of the things where I really started the business many years ago, as I wanted a safe space for women to come together to talk about the issues that were facing us, primarily women just like me working a full-time job and having their little passion projects or side hustles. One thing we all knew is that we were lacking in cash flow or capital and didn't have access and resource to funding, traditional funding, and or the friends and family round of types of funding. So I set about to connect with corporate sponsors and corporate donors that were interested in supporting these women. And I started a small HerRise micro grant fund where I give out monthly micro grants. Currently is monthly micro grants at $500. When I started, we'll talk about this later, but one of the things was getting access for me to that capital. So it really wasn't easy to fund this grant fund, but so we were giving out $100. And even then, the impact it made women feel to be selected, to be chosen, and the hope. It was planting seeds of hope, as I always used to say, with that little micro grant that really gives women the motivation that, one day this will get big enough where the traditional sources of funding will be available to me. So I started many years ago giving out micro grants, and we have now given away over $100,000 in since 2014.
Wow, that's amazing. That's awesome. That's I've not seen a lot of that. I'll tell you that. So that's really cool. Giving people resources and information and energy and time, and even giving people subsidizing or scholarshipizing your own content. I've seen a lot of that, which is also really great. But I think you're one of the few people I've seen that literally will give out a like you described, a micro grant or some starting capital for you to sort of invest in the seed of an idea. I think that's awesome. So
Thank you.
You mentioned at the start when you were starting out that you struggled yourself to sort of put together enough money to do what it was that you wanted to do. Could you tell us a little bit more about that before you started HerSuiteSpot? Tell me a little bit about what business was like business life was like for you. Did you have another business before that? Talk a little bit about that for me.
I'm one of those serial entrepreneurs where ever since my high school days, and that was a long time ago, Jason, I look younger than I am. But back then, I had like small little side hustles, as we call them, passion projects. I love to cook, so I thought I'd be a caterer. I love to make things, so I would make lotions and sell beauty products. I would career building and resume writing was one of my biggest side hustles that I didn't know back then would be such a great commodity right now. I loved, and I had the skills through my education to create resumes and to train and give tips. I didn't know it was training, right, back then, to give tips to my friends and my family on, how to ace those interviews. And I've found myself going in and out of entrepreneurship, but yet never truly sitting down, formalizing, and building the type of business that would one day support me and my family, right? And so many years ago, I said, you know what? I was in a place where my job was undervaluing me, was not seeing me. I didn't feel visible, and I wanted a way to help me feel like I thought for myself, right? And so I always knew that I was valuable, I was capable, and that I was leadership material. So as I say, I started this journey to fill my wage gap, with entrepreneurship. And my biggest struggle was that brand awareness, having corporations trust and believe in me and my brand to help fund that micro grant, which really started a lot of the programming that still exists for my business today.
So you mentioned something there just towards the end, that the biggest struggle that you had was brand awareness, was sort of like positioning yourself as somebody who is trustworthy, or is an authority in the space, or is worthy of selling content to people, individuals,
Right.
but also in your unique situation, worthy of funding, because you needed, you're giving out capital, right? So you need that coming in from somewhere.
Right.
Could you talk to us a little bit more about, like, what did you do to address that struggle, to sort of address the brand awareness issue, address the brand positioning issue? What did you kind of do to overcome that struggle?
You know what I did? I ingrained myself into the community. I gave before I started to ask, right? I made sure that I was in the business community where I lived. I started locally with the outreach, and I supported my community by showing up to community events, making sure that my name and at the time I had a nonprofit that I was also building, making sure that we were seen in community activities and mentioned when it came to media. I knew how important getting in our local paper would be. And that's actually how I got my first check for $1,000, by giving back to a program here in the community. And an insurance company, a major insurance company, local, contacted me and offered me $1,000, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, Jason, it's working. My plan is working. So I think to help build brand awareness, I was given great advice to start local. Everybody wants to build these big national and global brands. Sometimes it's so much easier to start locally, to build that credibility and to have those raving fans, talking about you. And that's what I did.
I was I don't usually go out for lunch today, but normally, but today I decided to go out for lunch. Humor me on this offshoot. There's a cafe up the road from me, and it's sort of like you've got like Whole Foods in the US, like is sort of the health food brand. Well, over here we've got a very similar brand called Planet Organic, and it's sort of a very like health food oriented kind of space. And one of the things they've got in the door is they've got a big notice board, and on the notice board they have hundreds and hundreds of people offering services. They stick their card on the thing, whatever. Yes. And I just happened to sit down for lunch today, and because, like you said, in my mind, I always want to reach, like, for the big, like, I want to reach globally. I want to help
Right.
impact these millions of people online, or in these Facebook groups of hundreds of thousands of people. And it
Right.
really struck me today when I was sort of eating my wrap or whatever, and I looked, and I just saw, like, within probably a mile radius of where I was sat, there was like 100 businesses who were trying to build a business, were trying to build a brand, were probably struggling with many of the same struggles that I've gone through in my past or whatever. And I just kind of sat to myself and thought, wow, if I was starting from nothing again, if I just came into this cafe and looked on this notice board and reached out to every single one of these people, I'd have like 100 potential clients,
Right.
to
Community.
reach out and help with. And because they're all in my local community, like you said,
Right.
the community, the value that would give to the local area, and it seems to be a much more accessible way to, like, to build a brand initially, certainly.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
So tell me then a little bit about, you had HerSuiteSpot sort of, up and running. You're starting to get some interest from, sources of funding. Tell me firstly, just explain to people, you don't self-fund that grant, or do you subsidize that grant? Like, where does that money come from? Sponsorship to you, let's say.
Yeah. In the beginning, it was all self-funded or bootstrapped, right? I would sell a
Hmm.
program, I'd sell a coaching program, I'd help someone develop their interviewing skills or whatever it was, and give them business strategy support or marketing support. And I would bootstrap that back into my fund. I would send that back to the fund, right? And so because the proof of me giving people the grants and their testimonials was another impact that helped corporations trust and believe in what I was doing. And so when you put all of that together, that's what helped me kind of scale that part of my business back then, and what keeps me going now. So now it is absolutely with a little bit of crowdfunding and primarily through corporate sponsorship. We do have a nonprofit that is our fiscal sponsor that helps us connect with corporate giving accounts through their foundations, as well as corporate marketing firms that want to use this as a marketing tool. So I'm so fortunate to be able to have many avenues at which I am able to get the grant funded.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I also run my side hustle is also a not for profit, and it's
Awesome.
also built on BuddyBoss. Has been a labor of love for many years, and so yeah, I'm certainly much further behind in my sort of non-profit journey than what you seem to be. But yeah, one of the things we always sort of struggled to connect the dots to was, okay, we're a non-profit as an entity, and there are sources of funding out there in the world that could be for us. Where do we get it though? How do we find it? Where, like, who is the magic, like, you can't, there's only so many government kind of grants or whatever,
Right.
how,
And those are
so
not
if,
easy.
yeah, so if somebody has my in the UK, it's slightly different in the US, but in the UK I have what's called a community interest company, which means it's halfway between being a limited company and a charity. So we don't have tax exemption, but we do have all of the other benefits of what it would be to be a non-profit.
Right.
And so if somebody is starting out, let's say, from your experience in the US, probably even in your state, if somebody is starting out, and they want to build a non-profit entity, or they want to sort of have a non-profit arm to their organization, how would you say they should? What are some of the ways that they should go about looking for funding or sources of income?
Well, that's a great question. It really it's about brand, mission, values, and alignment, right? Understanding and knowing your core values for your company and your nonprofit, and aligning that with organizations that are other nonprofits that could help you get grants as a combined effort. That's one way I've been able to work with other small groups, and together we've been able to create grant proposals to get funding for both of our causes. Other ways is to, once you have that brand value, brand mission, look at the corporations you want to do business with, right? Who do you want to partner with and sell the story of your missions, your shared missions? And from that, you just start calling people. LinkedIn, and that's a global platform, so it could be used whether you're in UK or US. Look for those people at companies, to search for the companies, look for the folks in the marketing areas, in the even the supply chain folks. They'll lead you at the end of the day. What has been so great for me is that I do a lot of networking. I do a lot of door knocking virtually, right? And they always lead me to the person that I need to speak to help me get closer to a yes.
Mm. Nice. Yeah, I like that. I like that. That's we have another guest who was a few weeks ago, Toyin, who runs Outdoorsy Black Women, and she recently had secured a sponsor with a very large outdoor clothing company.
Awesome.
I think it was Rab, I think, or one of the major national like outdoor clothing brands to sponsor her like outdoor activities. I might have got the company wrong, but the drift being, that came out of exactly what you just described. She got very clear on the mission of her community, the mission of her brand, and then she went looking for corporations who shared the ideals of that mission,
Right.
and who wanted to champion grassroots movements, who were looking for places to take some of their profits and
Yeah.
give them to, that sort of shared those brand ideals and that brand mission.
Right.
So tell me then, in the last sort of 18 months to 2 years, we sort of had March 2020 loom its head. Tell me a little bit about how did the pandemic affect your organization specifically, but also how did it affect your community? Did your sponsors start to kind of back off, drop out? Tell me a little bit about how that sort of went down in the last year.
Yeah, I'll tell you first. I'll start with my personal story. As the pandemic hit, I am a single mom, 7-year-old Joshua, and I here at home. I still work full time. So not only do I help women that work full time and do their business, that's me as well. And I have my nonprofit and my for profit business. I can tell you at the onset of the pandemic, I shut down like everybody else. I was in fear of my life, my parents' life. I wanted to go under a rock. I became a school teacher to a kindergartner. That was the worst part of the entire pandemic for me. Having to homeschool my kid who thinks I'm not smart at all and I'm not a teacher because Mrs. So and so is the best. And so I really had my own personal struggles. And because of that, I was ready to give up, Jason, to be honest with you. But what happened was that my community needed me. My community started to reach out to me. Many of them that were, and previous clients that were resistant to digital, doing business digitally and online, they were like, we don't need that. Our clients are across the street, or our clients are local, and they didn't need to go digital. And so my phone wouldn't stop ringing. People needed me. And at that point, that is also the culmination and the time where the murder of George Floyd was very heavy in our lives. And that in itself, in combination with the pandemic, really spurred me to double down on my grant fundraising. In that moment alone, I raised over 30 grand to help people that were impacted, businesses that were impacted by the pandemic, especially for us women of color that had no access to PPP, no access to big accountants to fill out those forms for us, and thus giving us no money and no funding, right? That was like thrown all over the place. And so because of that, I was able to, it really helped me because of the help that I had to give to so many others. I had to put aside my own personal struggles and feelings. And it really sparked me to, it re-engaged me, I should say, to not give up and to triple my efforts into building this community. And it has been a whirlwind ever since then.
That's really inspiring to hear that. Like, you know, firstly, as a single mom with a kid at home, to suddenly have another full time job thrown at you, which is the daily management of a little gremlin. You know,
Yes.
as well as the teaching, like whoever decided that you know mums and teachers were going to suddenly be all one and the same. That's another
Yeah.
job to have then also, you know, I guess like overcome it isn't necessarily the right phrase, but to sort of
Work
use
through
that
it.
energy to work through it,
Yeah.
yeah, and to have made to have turned good on that for your community and your local and your virtual community, is really inspiring to hear. So tell me then a little bit about tell me a bit about, you know, you tell me firstly, how long have you had the BuddyBoss app? Is that a recent addition to the sort of ecosystem? And
Mhm.
how long have you been on BuddyBoss? Has HerSuiteSpot always existed on BuddyBoss? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, as a result of the pandemic, so prior to the pandemic, I could tell you I attempted to build my own space online through her sweet spot. Um, and I failed at that. It didn't work well for me. Um, as a result of the pandemic and the outpouring support that I received, and then the need of support that I saw women receive, I felt it was so important for me to restart the idea of building a community directly on her sweet spot, a safe community outside of the noise of other social media platforms like the Facebooks that are inundated with so much pain, so much news, so much struggle. I needed a space that was quiet, right? And so where people and women of color could connect on a deeper level without those distractions. And so for me, I needed to go back, and I was introduced to Buddy Boss just around that time. I think I launched both the app, the web and the app almost at the same time. Probably the website I did first early on in 2021. And then later on in March of 2021 is when I launched the app. So I was introduced to it at the same time, and it was a no brainer for me. Uh, you know, once I thought about the struggles I had before, and when I discovered Body Boss, I couldn't believe almost everything I struggled with was solved with a click of a button, right? I was blown away by what Buddy Boss was able to create.
Wow, I love that. I love that. That's awesome. I'm so glad. I'm so glad you found us, and I'm so glad we found you. I probably wasn't even anything to do with the company at that point, but I'm so glad that that you found us.
Yeah.
So tell me, once you decided that you wanted to, you know, once you had reaffirmed or reignited this idea of relaunching this community,
hmm
what were the initial struggles that you faced? What were some of the challenges or things that slowed you down from getting started?
Well, it was again what I had before, and trying to erase all of that from the back end standpoint was a little challenging. I struggled with the other app with getting developers to make the improvements that I needed and to make the app match my brand. I found that to be very troublesome. And so I put it on pause for a long time. And I don't know, I really till this day don't remember how I found Buddy Boss, probably just researching things. And when I found Buddy Boss, I didn't believe again that it was so simple that I could launch this community. And with the initial implementation, all of the UI issues and the styling and the brand matching was gone, and it was corrected and fixed right away. And for me, I was like, oh my God, I have to bring this community back away from Facebook, outside of all the distractions. And I did it with very little help from my part-time developer. There were just small things on the back end that I could have used assistance with, but it was amazing, a game changer.
So tell me a little bit about kind of let's sort of dive down a rabbit hole that you didn't end up going down, which is, where do you think HerSuiteSpot would be now today if you'd never discovered BuddyBoss?
I don't think it would be the community that it is today, because I personally struggle with the distractions of social media, right? Personally. So I would not have been able to continue to be in the spaces, the Facebook groups, and to kind of, stay in that deeper zone of connecting with like-minded people, and really getting down to the heart of that ask give community, the building of solid relationships that allow me to do the things that I continue to do and meet new people. I don't think I would have been in this position right now had it not been for finding BuddyBoss and having it be so readily accessible and out of the box for me.
I love that. I love that. So, what do you think has been the biggest benefit to you personally of HerSuiteSpot, of creating it and seeing it into its existence? What's been the biggest benefit to you personally?
I think the biggest benefit for me is that I can work on the business more without having to worry about the technology of the community, because BuddyBoss takes care of that, right? You have the support team that is there for you when things need to be resolved, and is usually because of another plugin that you're using inside of WordPress. I think for me, that is the biggest help that me, and I say partnering with BuddyBoss to build this community, has been for me.
Nice. That's great. Graham's amazing. Our head of support. He's so good that we've recently sort of elevated him to he's now taking over as delivery manager as well for the app product, and for the web product, because he's always there when, not only is he revolutionizing the way that we manage our actual support, but he's also the first one there if something's, if there's been a release go out today and there's a plugin conflict somewhere else, he is the first one there inside the community. He's so active. I think Graham's we all, myself included, have a lot to thank for with Graham and the way he's managed the support team. So I'm really glad that you've identified that as one of the biggest benefits to you of the team. That's awesome. What do you think then, to ask about your users or your community members? What do you think has been the biggest benefit to them of you using BuddyBoss to deliver HerSuiteSpot?
Again, like you said, having that almost that unique space to build the community, have access to the classes, the live workshops that we're able to have inside the community, and all the forums and groups to build those conversations, the ability in this really curated space for women that are on similar journeys, for them to be able to connect with each other. Again, I talk about the distractions of other social media platforms because it's a really big thing, at least for me. And women come here and they tell me they're so appreciative of being able to find a space like this that, one, is giving out resources for funding, is giving out and able to provide and upskill them for their small businesses, has been invaluable to so many people. And for that, I'm happy that we are in this space and have found BuddyBoss to deliver that to them.
That's awesome. So tell me then, what's the next big thing that you're looking at building with HerSuiteSpot? What's the next sort of maybe the next feature of your community, or the next kind of source of content, or maybe the next thing that the operation's doing? What's next on the horizon?
Yeah, so like I said, many of our members are just like me, women in the workforce and running their businesses, filling their wage gap and promotion gap with their businesses. So, really connecting with more corporations and building out our job board has been something that, in support of our career center, has been something that I really want to spend some more time developing and connecting with corporations on that level as well, and really kind of we've done a lot of work with the entrepreneurs and the entrepreneurship programming and really building out what we do to support women at work as well. So that's one thing we're going to do. Another thing that we're looking forward to is having a true marketplace, and we're still looking for the right solutions to build out a marketplace where women can actually not just have the membership directory, but also have a marketplace for them to highlight their products, because we do have a lot of product-based business owners in our community as well as service-based business owners.
So that would be like an on-site marketplace for like vendors who are members of the community to like list their products that other
Yes,
members of the community can buy or support.
right.
That's great. Yeah, that's awesome. And you mentioned a jobs board as well as being another thing you're using WP Job Manager, I imagine.
Um, yes, I am. I think
I
it's
think
that's the one we've
I
started
think I
to
checked that. I
test.
think I checked that out on your site before, and that's why I mentioned because that's the one I use too, and I'm sort of doing a very similar thing of building out
Awesome.
my community is there's a lot of jobs, a lot of
Hmm.
the promotion of opportunities. I would say is our primary content type,
Awesome.
and it sort of falls to us to be the arbiter of which opportunities are fair and which ones are not, or which
Right.
opportunities are above board and which ones might not be. And that's one of the things that we've struggled for many years with inside of our Facebook groups is we have no control over the source of
Hmm.
anyone's content, and
Right.
that causes us a lot of trouble with jobs in particular because we have a responsibility to not promote work that is either underpaid or the working conditions aren't acceptable.
Right.
Um, but we have no way of gathering the appropriate information before somebody makes that post on the group.
Right.
So it means it's very difficult for us to sort of trim the wheat from the chaff and figure out which ones are good and which ones are bad. We probably get it wrong 50% of the time.
Yeah.
And so for me, building out that system inside BuddyBoss using WP Jobs Manager allows me to curate the jobs that come in through gathering the necessary pieces of information that are relevant to me and my community, and
Right.
then we moderate those before they go out, and then we
Right.
automatically push them out to the Facebook groups or to our own group, depending on which interests you're in. We have groups for each different job type.
Right. I think that's
So
so
yeah.
important. And that's one of the reasons why when you're when you have such a specific community like women of color, particularly a large population of Black women, probably 75% of our network are African American women. And, we want to ensure that the jobs that are exposed to them through us are with companies that, like you said, are true to honoring their commitment to diversity, inclusion, equity, and inclusion. And so that's why it's something that we are really we're testing out. And it's great because Buddy Boss has so many um, integrations that you can do, and really supports the community building aspects of the Learn Dash has been phenomenal. I was on a different before getting with Buddy Boss, I was on something else. I actually left Learn Dash. No, that's what happened. I left Learn Dash. I started building out my courses in a different app. And when I got to Buddy Boss, I quickly went back to Learn Dash because you guys integrate with them so beautifully. And the app itself is just another, you know, tool that helps us connect with our community, anywhere they go on the go. So it's been great seeing all the improvements that are happening, the new plugins that are happening, and I look forward to more enhancements as we go.
And there's a lot to look forward to over the next couple of months, for sure, for sure. Shall we jump into some lightning round questions? Shall I ask you a few quick questions and see what answers you can pull out of the top of your head with absolutely no preparation? Definitely not a sheet in front of you.
Let's go. Let's go.
All right, cool.
This always makes me nervous, but come on, let me try.
Okay, cool. So, what is the number one book that you think all entrepreneurs and new business owners should read?
Oh, there are two. So it's not just for entrepreneurs, but anybody who is in a leadership position. And because of the age of technology, I was introduced to this book through work. It's called Who Moved My Cheese? And it really helps people learn how to adapt to change. I worked in the industry well over 20 years. So back when Y2K was happening, it was like, oh my God, the world is going to end, right? And so then is when really people had to really begin to adapt to change, to technology, and almost trusting it. And so that was a book I was introduced to and oftentimes have to revert back to, especially as an entrepreneur, because I've changed this community platform so many times prior to meeting BuddyBoss that, again, I really oftentimes felt like I would give up. So really, Who Moved My Cheese?
Who Moved My Cheese? I've never actually read it, but I'll tell you a funny story. My mom loves a self-help book. My mom loves non-fiction, and she's probably given me my love of that. I'm sure you can see behind me I've got a shelf full of books that I can pretend I've read for when I'm on podcast episodes.
Yeah.
But Who Moved My Cheese is a book that my dad has had on his bedside table for probably 15 years and never opened it.
Really?
Because I think my mom gave it to him as a gift. About like 15 years ago, whatever, as a sort of a, hey, like maybe, why don't you read this book? Maybe there's some ideas in here that you might want to grapple with, or you might want to wrap your head around it a little bit. And my dad sort of is a little bit resistant to change, for to put it lightly, and sort of that book became a paperweight or for many years. So now that you've mentioned it, it's back in my head, and I should go back and I should read that one myself for sure.
You should read it. I mean, it is an old book. I don't even remember what year it was that I was introduced to it, but it's something that like I said, I go back to all the time. And Jason, you mentioned the shelf behind you. I'd be remiss not to mention my own books, as one of the things that I am known for is being a 4-time best-selling author and publisher of my own anthologies, where I give women an opportunity to share their voice through a chapter in my books. So I've authored several books. You can find them on Amazon.
We'll link to them in the show notes. We'll have
Awesome.
them linked below for sure. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
What are the names of some of the books?
Pathways to Her Rise was the most recent book that I actually put together with the women that were selected as recipients of the COVID response grant in 2020. And in March of 2021, we published and launched a book as a part of Women's History Day, or International Women's Day. And that, I think, turned out to be one of my favorite book out of all the books that we produced. The first being Life Balance for Women on the Rise, and then Strategies for Business Success. And I forgive me. There's another one in there.
We'll link them all in the show notes anyway afterwards. You can email me a list and we'll have them linked. I'm sure you've got an author page somewhere we can link to as well.
Awesome.
For people want to check out more for sure. What's your favorite business motivational or inspirational quote?
It's my very own quote. It's, when we empower each other, we all rise. I live by that motto. That's what has sustained me throughout my years as the founder of HerSuiteSpot, and what keeps me going. I totally believe in the power of empowering one another.
I love that. Yeah, that reminds me of one my mum used to always say to me, which is a rising tide carries all boats.
Absolutely.
That that empowerment of your circle, of influence, or your network, it brings you with it.
Yep.
For sure. That's awesome. What's the number one place that you go online to learn about building your business?
Google. Is there
Yeah.
another? Google is my go-to for almost everything, in parenting advice, in business advice. I love to read my news from places like Black Enterprise, from Forbes, Business Insider. But oftentimes when I'm looking for the latest in topics, I'll go straight to Google.
Nice. Great. What's the one thing that you wish you knew before you started your business?
The one thing I wish I knew, and oftentimes still try to remind myself, is that you don't have to do it alone, is that you should seek help and support. Ask for it. The ones that are closest to you are generally not the ones that will and can support you if you're not all on the same track, right? And similar journeys. So finding support is, one of the things that I wish that I knew or in the very beginning. Because your business is your baby, so you're kind of scared, and you don't want people to tear you down, and you don't want them to think that you're not equipped. Because there's this thing in the entrepreneurship world that makes you believe that if you can't solve it, then you can't be it. Or maybe that comes from corporate America, right? That you have to know and do and be everything to everyone, and that's not true.
I love that. Yeah. So I've got one now for you, which is a question that I ask to every guest, but for you, it's going to be a little special question. So, if I was to take your business away from you today, and I was to take everything that you had, but I was to give you a grant of $500, like one of the grants that you would give out, and if I was to send you back with all of the information that you have and all of the knowledge that you have, and all of your basic needs were taken care of, but you only had $500 and you had to restart your business all over again, what's the very first thing that you would do?
Probably the very first thing I did to build my online community beyond Facebook was get my Zoom account. That is what connected me to people digitally before Zoom became a thing. And because like I said, I come from the world of fintech. I've worked with distributed colleagues for years. I knew the importance and the power of connecting virtually through video conference. And so that was one of the first things I invested in, and probably would be what I do again.
Nice. So let me ask you that question in reverse then as well, which is, if I gave you a $1 million grant today, if I said you've been selected for the BuddyBoss $1 million Build Your Business grant, what's the next thing that you would do to build HerSuiteSpot today?
Increase the amount of grants I give out now.
Right.
I would obviously double down on the technology and hiring to have more staff to provide more content and resources to people. But one of the things, I would either become an angel investor, which is something that for me personally, I would love to do. And again, just go from micro grant to just straight up grant and take away that micro.
Macro grant.
Macro grant. Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, I obviously, as somebody who doesn't necessarily run a business that kind of invests cash or capital into other businesses, I think it's a really interesting notion to not just take your $500 grant and give it to somebody and say, there you go, here's some starting capital, good luck. But where this notion of the angel investing comes in, whereby you give them that $500 in exchange for a percentage, which then means you as the experienced business owner is now invested in the success of where that money goes.
Right.
And that you get to go, okay, I'm giving you $500, but I'm also going to give you an hour a month of mentorship, or I'm going to help you set up get your branding straight, or I'm going to help you refine your products or your offerings or whatever. Because if you succeed, it's not just that if you take this $500 and you spend it, good luck, I hope you do well. If you succeed, now I have skin in the game, right? I have a vested interest in your success beyond just the giving of the capital, right?
Right. And I feel like what I do now, it is that anyway with the community, because our some of our grant recipients have, again, been a part of our anthology, which we fully funded and supported and marketed, and as well as some of our recent grant recipients. They do join the network. They engage as part of their award is to be connected within the community as well, and some of them are still with us in our coaching programs as well. So it's what we do now. But as I get that $1 million, Jason, I plan to then start to reap some own personal benefits from it through angel investing.
For sure. I'd spend all of mine on ice cream and Haribos, or my mind would go. Ben and Jerry's, $1 million worth of Ben and Jerry's. That's what I do. Tell all our listeners where they can go to learn more about you, learn more about HerSuiteSpot, where they can sort of find you online and connect with you.
Absolutely. You can find me on almost every platform at HerSuiteSpot.com. Simple enough. Nice. I am on LinkedIn as Marsha Guerrier and HerSuiteSpot, Instagram as HerSuiteSpot. I dabble a little in Twitter at HerSuiteSpot there as well. Nice. And you could always find us on our platform, on our website at www.HerSuiteSpot.com, and catch our podcast. I'm about to launch season 3 later in the fall. HerSuiteSpotExperience.com.
Great. Awesome. For those of you who are listening as opposed to watching, if you scroll down and click the links that we'll have in there, FYI, HerSuiteSpot is SUITE as opposed to SWEET. Suite as in the C-suite.
The C-suite.
Just for those who are listening and not looking, or yes. not looking at a link. Right. Marsha, it was really great to chat with you. Thank you so much for giving me of your time and being so generous with your time. We'll speak to you again soon.
It was my pleasure, Jason. Thank you and all the BuddyBoss team for helping us build the community that we have been looking for.
You're very welcome. And all the success with HerSuiteSpot into the future. Speak to you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
That was Marsha Guerrier sharing with us how starting local allowed HerSuiteSpot to build brand awareness, credibility, and a community of raving fans. You can find everything discussed in today's podcast along with a transcript and links to any of the resources over at buddyboss.com/podcast. If you run an online course, a community, or a membership site powered by BuddyBoss and you'd like to feature in an upcoming podcast episode, head over to buddyboss.com/podcast and fill out the form to get in touch. That's it from me. Until next time.